welcome back for more punishment. For this video, we're going to talk about method overloading and overriding. I gave a little bit of a misleading blurb about this in the lecture, and I'd like to kind of correct a slight misperception. Anyway, overloading is you create a method in a child class with the same name, or in the same class, but with the same name but a different signature. That overloads the method. So basically a method with the same name but it does different things depending on what parameters or what return value it has. So you can't only, I mean, it's not like you can only overload methods in the superclass child class relationship. You can do them within the same class. It's just not that hard. Why would you do it? Well, the example I gave in the class about overloading an operator, like the plus operator, there's only so many names for things, and it's just kind of obvious they're going to do different things. Like if you had, like we had that contrived example of bark for the dog. We could have bark with no argument or no parameter list that would just bark once. Why not? And then bark with a parameter list of an integer called times, it would bark that many times, that kind of thing. But they're both called bark. That's kind of contrived, but you can see kind of where that might be useful. Overriding superclass methods. Okay, so say the superclass has a method, but your class, you want to have it do something else. If it has the same name and signature as the superclass version, that you are overriding it. It's simply rewriting the method with the same signature, which is the type, name, and parameter list. The superclass version, this is the misconception. I sort of led you to believe that you scribbled out the old one and created a new one. Well, you write over the old one, but you can still pick up your piece of paper you wrote yours on, look under it, and see the superclass version by using the super keyword. It's not scribbled out. It's just you put a post-it note over it and wrote a new one. You can pick up the post-it note and see what's under it. So let's do some of that. Let's do a little bit of overloading first, and then we'll talk about overriding. So back to our friends, we have teacher and human. You know, teacher inherits, extends human. Human has its fields, its getter and accessor, getter and setter methods, and then some generic methods here at the end. So human has a method called how's it going, and it does something. It has no parameter list. Well, a human says, hey, when you ask it how's it going. Well, teacher is a little more educated than your typical human, so he might say something different. So let's type over this. This is not important to us anymore. So let's override the how's it going method. The public void how's it going from human. Public void how's it going. In the teacher method, we'll override it. It has the same signature, same return, same name, same parameter list. And we're not going to put this in here. We're going to say because our teacher is more polite than your typical human. So they might say something nice like, I'm fine, how are you? So now we call from our client code, Mr. Harding, how's it going? Let's comment some of these things out. I'm fine, how are you? So when the client code says, hold on, we have an object, he's a teacher, he's Mr. Harding, and he inherits from human, we're going to call a method called how's it going. Well, it's going to say, which how's it going am I going to call? Well, we happen to know by looking at this, it's going to call the teacher how's it going, even though there's a human how's it going. It's going to call the teacher one because it's closer, right? This is the class that Mr. Harding is instantiated from. It's going to look there first. And if it finds one, it's going to use it. It's overridden. You can think of these as being kind of stacked on top of each other. Human is at the highest level, teacher is at the next level. We instantiated a teacher who inherited the human attributes. but he's a teacher first. So this has overridden this version of how's it going up here. Okay? That in its most basic form is overriding methods. A child class can simply redefine with the same signature, and you've done it. You've overridden the one at the higher level. Now, here's some magic, okay? We can still access the one up in human here, the superclass, like this. What? So now we just said we're in the teacher class, and we have a how's it going method. From inside that method, we're going to call the superclass version of how's it going. Is that going to work? Let's find out. It works. I'm fine, how are you? And then hey. So the first result is it printing out this line, and the second is it calling the superclass version of how's it going. It says right there, human how's it going. This one is teacher how's it going. This is the only one that gets executed directly. From inside here, it calls the superclass how's it going. Again, would this work if that was private? No. It only works because it's public. For example, if we tried to change this to super say hey, we get a red X, not visible. Hopefully that's clear. Again, I misled you a little bit about that today in class. Private means private. I mean, it just means private. You can't get to it from client code. It's private. You can only get to it from inside the class in which it's defined. These guys are still public because I didn't say private in front of them, but remember up here in human, we did go ahead and make all these private just to demonstrate some stuff. These are complaining that they're not used. That's because they're not used. So that gets us now to overloading. That's overriding. So now we want to overload a method. So here we are in teacher, and we have how's it going. Well, we could overload it by making another one with the same name, different parameter list, or a different return type. And in this case, we'll do parameters list. Yeah, it's fine. Whatever. We'll just say string how. So inside this one, we're passed a string called how. And let's do this. All right, so you see what this does. If it sent this string, how, it's going to just print out, I'm whatever how is, how are you? Same name, different parameter lists. So it's been overloaded. We previously overrode the human how's it going. Now we're just going to overload this how's it going with another one that gets a parameter. So this still works, hopefully. Yes. Where is it? Oh, there it is. We call this version, I'm not so good, how are you? That capitalization looks funny. And no one would actually say that in real life. I'm not so good, how are you? There it is. When we call how's it going with no parameters, or no arguments, I'm sorry, no arguments, it says I'm fine, how are you? And then it says hey, because you remember we put that in there. But when you call how's it going with a single argument, The teacher class says, I got that. I have a how's it going with a single string argument. And here's what I do. So this is overloading. This is overriding the human method of the same name. And parameter list. And return type. Basically the same signature. This is called the signature. At least that's what I call it. Public void, how's it going? No parameters. So, I don't know. I guess we could go into more examples, but we've demonstrated all this stuff that we can override a method by just creating one with the same signature. We can still access the one that we've overridden from inside this, anywhere inside this class, just by referring to it as super. Okay. Now this is super dot a method and a parameter list. You remember up here the super keyword by itself with a parameter list, an optional parameter list, calls the constructor of the superclass. Call superclass constructor. Not really sure how much more I want to go into. I've spent quite a lot of time boring you. This is already getting pretty long, so I'll probably wrap this up. The next thing is the polymorphism, which we're going to talk about, but let's just do a real quick little how the heck does that work on that, okay? So we instantiated a teacher called Mr. Harding and made him a new teacher with all of these things. We could also do this. What? So I just created a variable called Mr. Harding of type human and created a new teacher. Is that going to work? Well, actually, let's not comment that out. Let's let that error. There is an error. It says, how's it going in the type human is not applicable for the arguments string. Well, you remember how's it going with a string is in teacher. It's right here. Up here in human, doesn't exist. What did we just do? Don't pay attention to this too much. Let's just think about it real quick as sort of a teaser for polymorphism. I created a variable as type human and created a new teacher. Well, a teacher is a human. Remember we said is a. So the superclass for a teacher is a human. He is a human. So I can take a variable that is type human and assign a teacher object to it. And it works just fine. As long as you only use fields and methods, if you only access fields and methods directly, we can access these directly because they're public, and we can access these methods because they are in the teacher class. If we try to do anything over here, it won't work. So we did how's it going, and it didn't execute this because it doesn't know about it. All it knows about is the teacher how's it going, which is this one. I'm fine, how are you? Isn't that interesting? I think it is. We overrode the how's it going with no parameters and a void return in human right here, and it should say hey, which is hey. But instead we got this one, which is the teacher one, which is how's it going, which says I'm fine, how are you? Let's see, where did that hey come from? Where did that hey come from? It shouldn't happen, should it? Oh, because we call the super how's it going. And that's fine, because this teacher knows that it's a, wait a minute. What the hell? So we instantiated a human, Mr. Harding, made him a teacher, called Mr. Harding, how's it going? And it did, I'm fine, how are you? And hey. And that should have been in the human because it doesn't know anything about the teacher stuff. Oh, but it was not. It did call They did call this one. Well, I lied. At any rate, I obviously have a little more studying to do on that, but the fact is that you can do this. We know that this works. We declared a variable called Mr. Harding and made him a human, and we put a teacher in it. It points at a teacher, but a teacher is a human, so this is okay. That's the main point that I wanted to get at as far as what's coming up next, which is polymorphism. All right, so now that I've left you with a confusing thing, hopefully the rest of it made sense.